Hello, everybody. Welcome back to the Talking Assistant Show. I am Tony, Tony Solo on Twitter, and with me tonight is Kelly Toole. Say hi, Kelly.
Hi, everybody. It's Kelly at KELLYTHUL on Twitter. Glad to be back.
And and Mike is not with us this evening. He is attending a holiday party with his wife, so he couldn't make it. Um, but it's been a long time since we had a Talking Assistant show, and there's been four um, TARDIS episodes, so we thought we'd get caught up. And Talking Assistant may not be as regular as it was, but we'll probably do one every other week or something like that. Maybe a little bit more frequent. Maybe there may be a gap, a couple of weeks when we have time to fit these in. We'll get them done. Um, so I hope everybody's been keeping tabs and keeping track of um, the assistant and Dylan's endeavors. So, what'd you think about the first episode? We're going to talk. I guess they all don't have um, titles. It's just TARDIS Quest One, TARDIS Quest Two. Um, so it's one of the things that we've been asking people to do, and that is to people Dylan to do is let us. We want to find the TARDIS, and so um, Dylan is searching for that. What'd you think about the first one, Cal?
Well, it was kind of neat to have this collection of it's kind of like a mini series within the Assistant, which is the TARDIS Quest series here, which I'm sure is how folks will refer to it in the future as this kind of very kind of special moment in the Assistant. Um, so, uh, so obviously, as always, I enjoyed all of them. I would say probably uh, this one, the first one was not necessarily my favorite of them, but again, that's just relative. I liked them all, but I'm trying to remember because there's a lot of territory covered. But I believe the first TARDIS episode one is where it's the kind of miniature sized house, correct?
Yes, and one of the and you people can play along. What we do, and when Mike is here, usually we watch the episodes together, and we talk about what we're seeing, and we ask each other's questions, and that's exactly what we were talking about before the show. It looks like one of those sheds that you can find at Home Depot, but I think, and you could see it, and I might be wrong, Kelly, but on the side it looks like there's an air conditioning unit, like a not a window model, like a central air type AC unit, and the building looks like something you'd see outside Home Depot that they sell like a shed.
Yeah, there's not a lot of central to central air in that
Yeah.
place.
When you have something like that, you just set up the unit, and like, where are you going to put the inside piece unless um but yeah, that nice and cold, nice and cool there in the summertime. um but and that's the running discussion we have, is like, what the hell is that? Like, where did he find that? Like, is that, does somebody actually live there? And then, you know because we know there was a TARDIS episode 2, we know the occupants of the house didn't actually come out and shoot Dylan or have him arrested or anything along those lines. Although if something like that happened and he got it on film and then put it on YouTube, I think it would be pretty funny. Um,
Yeah.
but we will caution Dylan, whatever you do, please don't get arrested. Um,
Or if you do, find a way to smuggle your phone in to the cell because I think you need to shoot an episode with your new bunkmate. That would be
yeah,
awesome.
Dylan will come out with a prison wife or husband, however that works. But yeah, it was interesting because um, that location, it seemed like, maybe you'd see that if you were passing by from the road, but it seemed like it was set back from the road a little bit. So and Did he show that location at another time? Because I seem to remember at one time he stopped on the side of the road and he saw like there was a building in the distance, but he never walked up to it.
That path, yeah, that path looked a little familiar. Um, so maybe shot from a different angle, but yeah, it did some of it because I don't think it's the first time we've seen that structure. I'd have to go back and refresh myself, but the key thing and there's a I think as Dylan writes this, he's developed because the assistant isn't of this world. He kind of works in language to show that this person isn't of this world because the assistant says things that I don't think any uh, lifelong resident of our planet would say. Like when describing the facility, the building set that were kind of overlooking the potential TARDIS, which I'm assuming was maybe a retirement home or an assisted living facility. He referred to it as, I believe, the facility for old people.
Yes.
So I think, and that's just kind of him giving a wave to this person. He knows about all the things, but it's not really as familiar because that was, and I think even I don't know if it was the start of this episode, but somewhere in there too, there was the I had a craving for eggnog, for another one that was just you would try to say it was just kind of an interesting phrasing. So, but the facility for
Good.
old people was there, and I think we've seen a glimpse of that before too.
Well, and that'll bring us to probably uh, one of my favorite episodes so far, um, which was TARDIS Quest number 2, which had a couple of very funny moments in it. Um, that were, like Dylan's was like, okay, yes, really, he came out and said, look, it's a porta potty. It could be my TARDIS, and I seriously am going to go into this thing. That's what the attitude he had when he went in. And um, that whole sequence inside the porta potty, I thought was pretty funny and well done. Your thoughts, Kel?
Pretty neat. A little bit of a name check in this episode, so that was
Well, yes,
very cool to kind of see there. Again in terms of a filmmaking style, uh, just like in the Halloween movies, uh, you don't show everything, and so sometimes what you don't show is worse. And I was
yeah,
concerned as we went into the porta potty, and Dylan began scanning parts of it. The camera dipped a little bit, and I thought he was going to provide us a shot down the business end of the porta potty, which he didn't. He spared us, and I'd like to thank Dylan for that.
yeah.
and I think it worked. I think we all knew what was there, and we didn't need to see it. So that was good.
Well, I really did think that Dylan's comedic timing in that whole sequence, it worked very well because he walked up to it, opened the door, and looked around and said, "Nope, it's just a porta potty." And then he looked around and he dropped Laura Norman's name, and you'd have to be a snark aleck to get that reference, but it's someone that both Kelly and I and Dylan have interacted with on Twitter with regularity. But then, he kind of again he does the look around with the camera. He didn't do the dip, but then he said, "Why am I still here?" And I think that was timed right. And before the show, I said the only way this could have been done any better would have been if Dylan would have walked in and the camera would have stayed outside, and either Dylan we would have been able to hear him, or he would have just come right out of the porta potty and maybe zipping up his trousers and delivering the final line and said, "Why am I still here?" But it made it look like he actually used the facility while he was in it. But uh, I chuckled pretty heavily during TARDIS Quest number 2.
Definitely. The, the most humorous of these series, I believe.
Yes, and that brings us to number three, um, which I believe is the one where the TARDIS quest takes us to Dylan's kid's school, I guess. Um, and in this one, it's TARDIS quest number three, and there's three um, objects that he's checking out. Which, if you think, I think a porta potty would have been worse than a garbage dumpster, but it was a garbage dumpster, or three of them, which was three and three. You know, it was TARDIS quest number three, three garbage dumpsters. Um, it would have been cool if there would have been something in there, like a rat or something, or in one of them, if he would have found another clue, that would have been cool too. But uh, it didn't. It was. I liked the episode. There was just nothing in there that kind of stood out for me. Um, Kelly, how about you?
No, I think the whole third of the series, three dumpsters, that was kind of clever, and that part was pretty neat. Um, Unlike the porta potty episode and the dumpster episode, we did actually get a little bit of look inside the dumpsters here, and they were not particularly unpleasant, which I guess is ultimately a good thing from there. But yeah, I think it was a necessary element. Continued to move the story along, continued to go through the process of I'm checking this and I'm checking that, but didn't have the humorous edge of the previous episode. Um, and beyond that, but yeah, it was interesting. It moved, it moved along, and I think this is the one. I mean, you started to get hints, and then it's driven home in the last episode of Dylan becoming a little bit fatigued and starting to wear out on his TARDIS quest, and maybe if he's not successful soon, gonna park that activity for a while.
Yep, and we've got Laura saying that she could smell the dumpsters as he was opening them up, and I guess from a custodial point of view, the best way to keep the inside of a dumpster clean, which is near impossible, but just as long as you have good garbage bags and your trash doesn't open up, the inside of a dumpster, and I think he may have mentioned it, it wouldn't be a bad place because it's not some place that someone's going to be looking for a TARDIS to be, you know. Um, uh, a porta potty would have been size-wise, probably it's the closest thing to having something the size of a phone booth um, that you actually see these days. Um, but yeah, I mean, you could understand why. He gave us the reasons why he was checking it because it's accessible, and nobody would want to go in a dumpster. So just by its nature, it itself is almost its own security uh, because it is a dumpster. A smart car. If a TARDIS was a smart car, hey, you might want to. Not that I would want to, or I would think of any reason to steal a smart car, but nobody's going to actually steal a dumpster or jump in a dumpster unless they're really desperate to get away from the cops or something.
Yep.
So, which brings us to number four, the last in the series. Um, I call this the Big Fence episode, but it's TARDIS Quest number four. And this is the episode you referred to earlier, Kelly, with the what were they called? The place where they keep the old people.
Facility for older people. The
The
facility for old people. That's right.
facility for old people, and politically correct, or maybe not, because some of these places are called assisted living. Um, I know not too far from where I live, there are 55 and older communities, which is, I guess, uh, it's not a single building, separate housing and stuff. But they're not assisted, which is a totally different uh, realm of care than you living in your own house, just people with no kids in your neighborhood. You know what I mean? Um, but I think we get some clues. I mean, you have to wait until the end of the episode. Um, I guess I'm gonna give it away. Dylan stumbles upon, I guess it's a water pumping station on this long, lonely road. Um, and it's big. It's got a fence around it that's about 6 feet high with some chain link, with some barbed wire on top. And at the end, Dylan has an epiphany. So we're hoping that there's going to be some more episodes coming up soon talking about something called Rosewood. Now, Kel, is there anything in the Doctor Who um,
So
timelines that?
so not so much in the Doctor Who timeline, but I'm as you know a student of Maryland history, and there is something about the Rosewood Center, which was founded in 1888. Uh,
Okay, okay,
and
so
if you
that's
go,
oh, wait, isn't that's just after, but Dylan was there in Maryland in that area in the 1860s. We know,
yes,
so we don't know when he left. So 1888 fits right in with that timeline of his earlier self. So
yeah, so the timeline squares up, and as founded originally, of course, it was the Rosewood Asylum and Training School for the Feeble-Minded. And so that was the actual. That's not Kelly making it up. That was the actual name of the
the
institution.
Rosewood Center for the Training of the Feeble-Minded.
Yes.
Okay.
So so that was the original. Subsequently, it became the Rosewood Center, but originally it was the Asylum and Training School for the Feeble-Minded. And then at some point they chose to change. I don't know why chose to change the name, and it became Rosewood State Hospital, and then the Rosewood Center, and then it was closed. And around 2008 or so, there was a fire that burned one of the vacant buildings. And so Dylan talked about an explosion. He talked about an explosion around 10 years ago, which so the timelines are close. And so this is either, I don't believe this is pulling from a Doctor Who reference, but I think it's either a Maryland history reference or it could be just part of the universe building Dylan's doing.
Okay. And how about a Dr. Mike? Trying to figure that reference out. Um, as far as I know, I've never heard of any other Doctor in the Doctor Who universe other than the Doctor. You know. So I'm wondering if we're going to be getting introduced to a new character um, coming up soon.
Yep, and I think we are, and I'm pretty excited to kind of see because this will beyond his cat and children. Um, this has been Dylan. So and I don't believe the children in the past episodes were working off an official script. I think
Okay.
they might have been 100% improvised. And the cat, I know the cat is notorious for being unwilling to work off of a script, and insists upon acting in the moment. So
Yeah. Well, I've heard that the cat is actually a method actor, and a lot of times in interviews that haven't been published yet, but the cat insists on playing a dog. So even though it looks like a cat, it actually is playing a dog um, that's acting like a cat, I guess. Um, but very Orwellian. And when I say Orwellian, I don't mean George Orwell. I mean Orson Welles Orwellian.
oh, well, that's a different use. That never Orsonian. I don't know.
Orsonian. Yeah. Only because he started saying Rosewood at the end, and I was thinking Rosebud, Rosebud.
Mm-hmm.
Um, So I thought that was very interesting, and that's amazing. That it's just great that you're um, a Maryland history buff. That you were able to pull. And I'm just wondering, maybe we'll get some feedback from Dylan, and he'll be able to tell us whether or not you've hit the nail on the head um, with that Rosewood Center. Um, but here goes an interesting fact. Way back in the day, um, I was talking to a gentleman who works in a hospital, and I don't think I've mentioned this before, but in the early 1900s, um, in some hospitals on the weekend for sport, they used to let people buy tickets and come in and watch the people that were mentally ill. And in some cases, they would bring all of the mentally ill patients down to a basement, and some of these people would be violent, and they would do things to each other, and they would take money. The doctors now would take money from people and allow them to come and watch the goings um, on a Friday and a Saturday night. So, you know, when you say it was an asylum, I'm guessing some people got rich off of that, and I wonder if that's going to play into any of this going forward.
I
But
do I do think if there was a training school for the feeble-minded and there was a doctor there, I can't think of any more appropriate name for that doctor than Mike. So I just wonder if there's a tie there. I don't know if it'll be feeble-minded Dr. Mike or what yet, but I think there's something there.
well, hopefully, we won't have to wait too long to find out whether or not who, what, where, or when. Um, this is all going to take place, but I just happened to look down. Oh my goodness gracious! It's 15 minutes to 10, and if you look at your Twitter feed, one of our friends from Z Nation is actually already tweeting at us. So I think we're done for now. Look for Talking Assistant. We'll tweet a link before we do the next one. Maybe in a couple of weeks. I mean, we've got all these holidays coming up, uh, and we'll have to see when the next one's gonna come up. We may not do another Talking Assistant until New Year's, depending on how busy Dylan gets and what our schedule's like. But Kelly, Mike, and I will get together, and we'll see if we can work out something, for at least once a month or something like that, people. So continue to watch Talking Ass. Continue to watch the world's greatest web series, which is the Assistant, and watch Talking Assistant. Have a good evening, people. We'll see you out there on Twitterland.
Thanks.